Earth had always been quiet in the vastness of the galaxy. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars with wonder, imagining what might be out there. Scientists had built telescopes that could peer into the depths of space, and radio waves were sent endlessly into the void. But humans had always restrained themselves. They had the technology, the intelligence, and the curiosity to reach beyond their planet. Yet the leaders of the world had made a silent pact. Earth would observe, not interfere. Humans would remain careful, hidden in plain sight so as not to disturb or alarm anyone who might be watching. In offices and laboratories around the world, people worked quietly, knowing that humanity's power was far greater than most could imagine. There were secret projects, hidden from the public eye, that pushed the boundaries of science. Rockets, capable of reaching faraway stars, were being designed, and machines that could travel faster than light were being tested in controlled environments. But none of these were revealed to the rest of humanity. The reasoning was simple. Earth did not want to be a threat. For a long time, restraint was seen as the most important tool for survival. Despite this careful hiding, there were subtle hints that Earth was not entirely alone. Signals were received that could not be explained. Patterns in the radio waves, strange bursts of energy from distant parts of space. Many scientists debated what they were seeing. Some dismissed the signals as natural cosmic phenomena, while others suspected they were messages from another civilization. Nobody could prove it, and the world continued on, distracted by its own problems, climate changes, political conflicts, and social challenges. Yet quietly, the galaxy was watching, taking note of humanity's behavior, measuring its patience, its intelligence, and its restraint. In the halls of power, the world's leaders held secret meetings, discussing the implications of these mysterious signals. They knew that Earth had become capable of more than just observing. It could act. Weapons that could devastate planets had been developed, and scientific breakthroughs had unlocked energy sources that could power civilizations for centuries. But humanity had agreed, consciously and collectively, not to use these abilities recklessly. The leaders reminded each other of this commitment. Restraint was necessary, or it could bring destruction not only to humans but potentially to the entire planet. Meanwhile, ordinary people continued their lives completely unaware of the subtle cosmic attention Earth had attracted. Children played in the streets, parents went to work, and communities celebrated small victories of daily life. Humanity had achieved incredible things, yet it remained humble, not wanting to make waves that could attract dangerous attention. There was comfort in ignorance, and yet a quiet pride in knowing that humans had reached heights others in the galaxy had likely never seen. One night, in a small observatory tucked in the mountains, a scientist noticed something unusual. The signals coming from deep space were different this time. They were not random bursts, nor were they mere noise. They seemed deliberate, patterned in a way that suggested intelligence behind them. The scientist felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Could this be the first real contact? Or was it simply another cosmic coincidence? As she worked through the night analyzing the waves and cross-referencing them with known celestial events, it became clear that this was no accident. Something or someone was trying to communicate. When the information reached the world's leaders, there was a tense silence. Every eye turned toward the stars, every mind racing with possibilities. For years, humanity had restrained itself, choosing to hide its capabilities. And now, the universe was asking a question. Why? Why had Earth remained silent for so long? Messages had been sent for decades, carefully phrased to show intelligence but never aggression. And now, from the void came a response, simple yet powerful, asking humanity to explain its restraint. The Council of Leaders convened in a secure location far beneath the surface of the Earth. Screens lit up with data from observatories, satellites, and deep space scanners. Specialists in every field, physics, engineering, biology, diplomacy, presented their findings. All evidence suggested that the galaxy was aware of humans, watching them closely. Not only were humans intelligent, but they had also been measured as patient and careful, a species capable of understanding consequences and avoiding unnecessary conflict. In this quiet chamber, there was a shared understanding. Earth had been tested, and it had passed. The restraint that humans had practiced for centuries had not gone unnoticed. And yet, with this realization came a new challenge. Humanity had the ability to act, to assert itself, and to step forward into a larger role in the galaxy. But the question remained, how? How could humans make their presence known without inviting danger? The answer was not simple, and debate continued late into the night. Outside, the world remained oblivious. Cities glowed under the night sky, unaware of the silent eyes watching them. People laughed, argued, and went about their ordinary lives while the galaxy evaluated their species. There was a strange beauty in this ignorance. Humanity was both vulnerable and powerful, a fragile species capable of incredible achievements, standing on the edge of the unknown. The contrast between daily life on Earth and the vastness of space was striking. Humans had built towers that reached into the sky, yet their gaze could not reach the stars that were now observing them. And then came the first subtle sign of recognition. Satellites in orbit began detecting anomalies, tiny disturbances that were not caused by any known natural force. Instruments picked up faint energy pulses that seemed to respond to human activity. Scientists speculated endlessly. Was this a test, a greeting, or a warning? The truth was that humanity had never been alone, and now it was being reminded of that fact. The galaxy was alive with awareness, and Earth was no longer just a distant blue dot. It was being acknowledged as a thinking, capable, and restrained civilization. For the scientists and leaders who understood the significance, a sense of awe and responsibility settled over them. They realized that the future of Earth could no longer be defined solely by human conflicts or ambitions. The galaxy had its own expectations, its own rules, and humans would have to learn quickly how to navigate them. The old approach of quiet observation had served well, but it could not continue forever. Humanity had been measured and found worthy, but worthiness came with responsibility. As the sun rose over cities, oceans, and deserts, Earth continued its normal rhythm. People woke, worked, and dreamed without knowing how close they were to a new chapter in their history. Yet beneath the surface of ordinary life, a transformation had begun. Humanity had been seen, and in being seen, it had been challenged. The quiet, restrained Earth of the past was no longer enough. Change was coming, slow at first, and then with increasing speed. And when that change arrived, it would test everything humans believed about themselves and their place in the cosmos. This was the moment when humanity realized something profound. The galaxy was not just out there in the distant night sky. It had noticed them, it had evaluated them, and it was waiting. The restraint that humans had practiced for centuries had been a shield, but it had also been a test. And now, the first signals of recognition were beginning to show that the next stage was approaching. Earth could no longer simply hide. It had to decide as a species how it would step forward, how it would respond, and how it would define itself to the rest of the galaxy. The quiet before the storm had ended. For the first time, humans understood that they were not alone, and that restraint, no matter how carefully practiced, could not last forever. The galaxy had asked its question, and humanity's journey toward a new chapter, one of courage, revelation, and potential confrontation, was about to begin. The first real proof that Earth was not alone came as a quiet shock to the world. At first, people dismissed it as a glitch, a random interference in satellites and communication systems. But as hours passed and the anomaly continued, it became clear that something was trying to reach humanity. Across the planet, scientists watched their instruments spike with strange readings. The signals were unlike anything they had seen before, patterned, deliberate, and intelligent. Every pulse carried a rhythm, a tone that seemed almost like language, though no one could understand it at first. In laboratories and observatories, teams worked around the clock. Computers were set to decode the signals to find meaning hidden within the static. Specialists in linguistics, mathematics, and physics collaborated, trying to discern a pattern. The atmosphere was tense but electric. After decades of imagining first contact, humanity was finally facing it. Yet there was a nervous undercurrent. What did this mean? Were they being watched for observation, for evaluation, or for something more dangerous? The first breakthrough came late at night in a small research center far from any city lights. A young scientist noticed that the signal repeated every 36 minutes, and within the repetition were subtle variations, like a sequence of dots and dashes, but far more complex. It was a message, not noise. For the first time, humans could sense intention behind the alien presence. There was awe in the discovery and a quiet fear, too. The realization that Earth had been observed for so long in silence made the scientists shiver. Soon, governments were informed, though only a few of the world's top leaders knew the full details. Security was tight. Public panic had to be avoided. The message was delicate and required careful translation. Specialists worked tirelessly, trying to unravel the meaning hidden within the strange pulses. Each night brought new insights, small revelations, and more questions. What civilization could send such precise, intelligent signals? And why now, after so many years of silence? When the first partial translation came, it was as simple as it was astonishing. The message asked a question: why do you hide? Humanity had been quiet for centuries, restraining itself, sending signals of peace but never showing the full scope of its power. And now the galaxy wanted to know, why had Earth remained in the shadows? The question reverberated through the secret chambers of power. It was simple yet heavy with meaning. The Council of World Leaders convened immediately. In a room deep underground, illuminated by the glow of monitors displaying star maps and decoded signals, representatives spoke in hushed voices. Some were cautious, warning that revealing too much could be dangerous. Others argued that humanity had reached a point where it could assert itself without fear. One thing became clear: the galaxy had noticed. The quiet, restrained Earth had been observed, and the observers were now asking for an explanation. Meanwhile, life on the surface went on as usual. Children played under the sun, unaware that their planet had been addressed by intelligence beyond imagination. Workers went about their routines, unaware of the debates taking place in secure rooms. Cities glimmered with lights, rivers flowed, and the world seemed ordinary. Yet beneath the ordinary, a transformation was stirring. Humanity was awakening to the idea that it was no longer just a tiny planet, hiding in the cosmic darkness. It was being called to step forward. Scientists and engineers began developing a careful response. The message had to convey intelligence, restraint, and humanity's readiness to interact without threatening aggression. Teams crafted a communication that included mathematics, physics, and universal constants, languages of the universe. There were no words at first, only concepts. Every pulse, every signal was meant to show that humans were capable of thinking, reasoning, and understanding consequences. But beyond the logic, there was also an undercurrent of subtle warning. Humans were powerful and aware. As the message was prepared, debates raged among the scientists and leaders. Some feared that even a hint of power could provoke hostility. Others argued that restraint had already been observed for decades, and hiding any longer would only make humans appear weak. There was a shared understanding that Earth had been evaluated for patience and discipline, and now the galaxy wanted to see humanity's intentions clearly. It was a delicate balance. Show intelligence and capability, but not arrogance. Show restraint, but also awareness of strength. Finally, the transmission was ready. In a quiet command center, the signal was sent into space. It carried the complexity of human thought, the logic of science, and the unspoken power humanity had restrained for so long. As the pulses disappeared into the void, those watching felt a mixture of hope and fear. This was the first time Earth had answered directly. For years, humans had observed silently. Now they had spoken. The response did not bring immediate recognition, and days passed with no reply. Some feared that they had been ignored or misunderstood. Others wondered if the message had reached its intended recipients at all. And then slowly, subtle changes began. Satellites detected faint energy disturbances far from the solar system. Instruments recorded small gravitational shifts that did not fit natural models. There was no aggression, no direct contact, but it was clear that someone had noticed. Earth was no longer invisible. The revelation sparked a quiet excitement across the scientific community. Humanity had taken the first step into a larger cosmic stage. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. For centuries, humans had imagined intelligent life elsewhere, often thinking of distant, unreachable civilizations. Now, it was undeniable. Someone or something had been watching, and they were aware that Earth was ready to respond. In the council rooms, discussions shifted from caution to opportunity. Humanity had been measured, and the measurement had passed. The galaxy was no longer a distant mystery. It was an active presence acknowledging Earth. Plans were quietly made to expand humanity's reach, not recklessly, but with precision. Satellites, probes, and observation missions were accelerated. Technologies that had been kept secret were readied for demonstration. Humanity understood for the first time that it could no longer hide. Restraint had been tested, and now action required careful planning. Back on Earth, life continued with its ordinary rhythm. People still laughed, loved, and struggled with daily challenges, unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding above. Yet, in quiet labs and secure facilities, humans were making decisions that would change the trajectory of the planet. The question of why Earth had hidden itself had opened a new chapter. It was no longer enough to simply survive. Humanity had to consider its place among the stars. The young scientist who first deciphered part of the message often looked at the night sky in silence. The stars, once distant and untouchable, now felt alive with awareness. Humanity's restraint had been acknowledged, and the galaxy's question, "Why do you hide?" lingered in her mind. It was both a challenge and an invitation. Humans had been careful for centuries, measured in their actions, patient in their ambitions. But the galaxy had noticed, and now it was time for the next step. The first part of this cosmic conversation ended with a quiet understanding. Earth had been seen, and the observers were waiting. The galaxy had asked its question, and humanity had answered, not fully, but enough to signal readiness. The next phase would require courage, wisdom, and careful planning. Humanity's restraint had earned recognition, but recognition brought responsibility. Earth had stepped out of invisibility, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. This marked the start of a new era, one where humanity could no longer remain passive. The first contact, though indirect, had shattered centuries of hidden silence. For the first time, humans realized that they were participants in a larger cosmic community, and that every decision, every action, could carry weight far beyond their planet. The stars above were no longer just points of light. They were witnesses, listeners, and evaluators. Humanity had begun to respond, and the galaxy had taken notice. The quiet wonder of space had transformed into a living awareness of Earth. The signals were more than mere energy. They were a mirror, reflecting humanity's past restraint and its potential future. The planet was no longer alone in its thoughts, ambitions, or actions. Something intelligent and observant had acknowledged its presence, asking humanity to define itself not just as a species, but as a force capable of interacting with the vast unknown. Humanity's first contact had been cautious but meaningful. The pulse of intelligence had crossed the void, and the response had been measured yet powerful. For centuries, humans had hidden, restrained, and observed. Now the galaxy knew that Earth existed, that its people were thoughtful, capable, and aware. The question remained, what would humans do next? How would they respond to the challenge of being recognized, and what path would they choose in this new cosmic dialogue? And so, the second chapter of Earth's story among the stars had begun, not with fireworks, not with explosions, but with a quiet, deliberate pulse of understanding, curiosity, and restrained strength. Humanity had been seen. The galaxy had asked its first question, and the people of Earth for the first time had begun to answer. After the first contact, Earth began to change, even if most people did not notice it at first. For centuries, humans had restrained themselves, holding back from showing their full potential to the galaxy. But now the subtle acknowledgement from beyond the stars made it clear. The universe had noticed. Humanity's patience, intelligence, and careful observation had been measured, and it had passed the silent test. In secret facilities and research centers across the world, the reality of what humanity could achieve began to sink in. Technologies that had been carefully hidden from public knowledge suddenly seemed more urgent, more necessary. Scientists reviewed projects that had once been considered too dangerous to reveal. There were energy systems capable of powering cities for centuries, spacecraft that could travel further and faster than anyone had thought possible, and defense mechanisms that could protect the planet from almost any threat. For years, these had been restrained, stored away like tools in a box. Now they were being studied with a new perspective, one of readiness, not fear. The realization of power was both exhilarating and frightening. Humans had always thought of themselves as small, fragile, and limited to Earth. Yet every day evidence of capability grew clearer. Satellites that had been used to observe distant planets could now serve as gateways to the stars. Advanced propulsion systems, once theoretical, were showing signs of being operational. Artificial intelligence had reached a level where it could assist in calculations, strategies, and even in predicting possible outcomes of interstellar contact. The potential was staggering. Humanity had restrained itself for so long, and now it was beginning to understand just how much it could achieve. At the same time, governments around the world faced a delicate balance. They had to continue their cautious diplomacy while preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might not be entirely peaceful. Military experts quietly reviewed strategies, simulations, and contingency plans. Unlike before, the focus was not on secrecy alone. It was on readiness, demonstration, and a subtle assertion of capability. The galaxy had seen Earth's restraint. The next step was not to hide, but to signal that humans were awake, capable, and aware of their surroundings. Amid this preparation, scientists discovered something remarkable. Signals from deep space that had been dismissed as noise were actually tests. The galaxy was probing humanity's ingenuity, sending challenges to see how Earth would respond. These were not threats, nor were they invitations. They were assessments. Some signals required humans to calculate complex mathematical problems. Others tested navigation and energy management. The discoveries sparked excitement in laboratories and research centers. For the first time, humans realized that the galaxy was not only watching, they were learning how humans could act. This understanding led to a profound shift in the mindset of those working behind the scenes. Humanity's restraint had been intentional, but it had also been observed and evaluated. The universe had measured patience, discipline, and intelligence. For decades, Earth had remained quiet, careful not to provoke attention, and now, humans understood that restraint alone would not define their future. Awareness of power, combined with strategic demonstration, had become the next step. As the realization sank in, debates among leaders grew more intense. Some urged continued caution, warning that a premature display of strength could be interpreted as aggression. Others argued that the galaxy had already seen restraint for centuries, and continued hiding would only make humans appear weak or indecisive. They suggested a carefully planned, deliberate show of intelligence and capability, one that would signal readiness for interaction without provoking conflict. Every detail mattered, from the data transmitted in signals to the energy patterns used to demonstrate technology. Meanwhile, humanity's ordinary life continued, unaware of the cosmic scrutiny. Cities bustled with commuters, markets thrived with trade, and children continued to dream under the sun. Yet beneath the surface of daily routines, a quiet transformation was taking place. Engineers worked tirelessly to perfect propulsion systems. Communication arrays were upgraded to transmit farther and faster, and scientists ran simulations to anticipate possible scenarios in the galaxy. The knowledge that Earth was being evaluated drove human ingenuity to new heights. One of the most critical realizations was that humanity's own understanding of itself had changed. For centuries, people had measured progress by what could be seen on Earth: cities, technology, and social achievements. Now humans began to measure themselves by potential. The galaxy was not judging humanity by daily routines or political power. It was judging them by ability, adaptability, and intelligence. Suddenly, scientific breakthroughs were more than discoveries, they were statements. Every innovation, every experiment, became a reflection of human capability and readiness. In a high-security command center, scientists and strategists watched as simulations of interstellar interaction played out. They imagined the galaxy as a vast network of observers, each evaluating Earth differently. Some might be cautious, some curious, and some even wary. Humans realized that any misstep could have consequences beyond comprehension. Every signal sent, every spacecraft launched, was not just a technical challenge. It was a message to the universe about what Earth was capable of and how it thought. The realization of power also brought a deeper understanding of responsibility. With new capabilities came ethical dilemmas. Could humans use advanced technology without harming themselves or others? Could restraint be balanced with readiness? These questions sparked long debates among philosophers, scientists, and leaders. The galaxy had tested humans' patience, and now humans were testing themselves. The stakes were enormous, not just for Earth, but for every decision made about the planet's role in the cosmos. As the days passed, humans began to experiment more boldly. Advanced probes were sent farther than ever before, carrying instruments designed to measure cosmic activity and signals from intelligent sources. Spacecraft prepared for interstellar travel, equipped with systems that could operate independently for years. Every step was measured, precise, and deliberate. Humans were no longer simply observers. They were participants in a larger cosmic drama. The first visible sign of this shift came when instruments detected a distant anomaly in a nearby star system. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but careful observation revealed that it responded to human activity. Small pulses of energy, calculations performed on Earth, and transmissions all seemed to have a measurable effect. Scientists realized that this was not mere coincidence. Humans were interacting with the galaxy in ways they had not anticipated. The realization sparked a mixture of excitement, pride, and caution. Humanity had begun to leave its mark. For ordinary people, the world remained the same. Yet in the secret corners of Earth, humans had begun to see themselves differently. They were no longer a small species confined to a single planet. They were powerful, capable, and aware of their potential. For decades, restraint had been their strategy, a shield to protect themselves from unknown dangers. Now that strategy had evolved. Observation was still necessary, but demonstration, planning, and readiness had become equally important. The galaxy's questions lingered in human minds. Why do you hide? The answer was no longer silence. Humanity had begun to respond not only with messages, but with action, preparation, and capability. For the first time, humans recognized the true extent of what they could do, and that awareness changed the very way they viewed themselves. No longer bound solely by Earth's limitations, humanity understood that the next steps would be measured by courage, wisdom, and precision. At night, in quiet observatories far from city lights, scientists gazed at the stars with renewed determination. Each signal, each pulse of energy from the galaxy, was a reminder that humans were no longer just residents of a blue planet. They were participants in a cosmic community. The realization of power brought both excitement and humility. Humans had achieved much, but they had also been tested and measured. Now they were ready to demonstrate, not recklessly, but carefully, that restraint had been deliberate, that humanity's potential was real, and that Earth was prepared for the galaxy's next steps. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Laboratories hummed with activity, spacecraft were readied, and signals were crafted with precision. Humanity's eyes were no longer only on the stars. They were reaching outward, preparing to engage, respond, and demonstrate strength and intelligence. The quiet era of restraint had been necessary, but it had also been a preparation. Now humans were aware of their power and ready to embrace the next stage of interaction with the galaxy. This realization did more than change technology and strategy. It changed humanity itself. People in secret knew they were part of something larger, something beyond Earth. Every experiment, every launch, every calculation became a statement of capability, restraint, and intelligence. Humans were no longer hiding. They were preparing, measured, and deliberate, to step fully into a cosmic role that had been waiting for them all along. The galaxy had seen Earth's restraint, tested its patience, and measured its capabilities. Humanity now understood that power was not just potential, it was responsibility. And with this understanding, humans were no longer passive. The quiet of space was broken one morning by a discovery that would shake the world. Satellites orbiting Earth began detecting something unusual at the far edge of the solar system. At first, the readings seemed like minor anomalies, strange energy fluctuations, tiny movements of distant objects. But as instruments refined their measurements, the truth became undeniable. Something was there, massive and deliberate, observing Earth from afar. Scientists raced to confirm what they were seeing. Observatories turned their most powerful telescopes toward the object. It was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Shapes appeared in the darkness of space that were clearly not natural. Patterns, lights, and movements suggested that intelligence controlled these objects. Some were enormous, dwarfing any human spacecraft, yet their movements were precise, deliberate, and almost cautious. The initial shock was mixed with fascination. Humanity was about to see the galaxy in a way no one had imagined. In government command centers, the news spread quickly. A meeting of world leaders and top scientists was convened in a secure facility. Screens displayed live data from satellites, diagrams of the alien shapes, and simulations of their movements. Everyone understood the stakes. These were not accidental visitors. They were observers, and their presence carried meaning. The world held its breath, even if most people did not yet know what was happening. For years, humans had restrained themselves, hiding the full extent of their capabilities. Now the galaxy had brought its attention close to home. The alien fleet was not attacking, but it was clearly evaluating. Every movement seemed intentional, every pattern carefully executed. Scientists speculated endlessly. Were these probes, scouts, messengers, or were they something far more complex, beings of intelligence and curiosity beyond human comprehension? The uncertainty was unsettling, yet it sparked a determination among Earth's leaders and scientists alike. Humanity would respond, but with strategy, caution, and clarity. The first decision was simple but profound. Earth would not panic. This was not an invasion, not yet. The goal was to communicate, to signal awareness without aggression. Specialists worked tirelessly to prepare a demonstration of humanity's capabilities. Signals were sent from Earth, showing advanced mathematics, principles of physics, and patterns of intelligence that any observer could recognize. Every pulse, every broadcast was carefully crafted to show thoughtfulness, logic, and restraint. Yet hidden within the signal, there was a subtle message. Humans were aware, capable, and ready to defend themselves if necessary. The alien fleet responded not with fire or destruction, but with more energy pulses, more calculated movements. It became clear that the observers were testing humanity, evaluating reactions and measuring confidence. Some scientists described it as a conversation without words, a cosmic dialogue where movements, energy, and patterns spoke louder than language. Every day, instruments recorded changes in the fleet's position, adjustments in energy output, and signs of curiosity that seemed almost human in their subtlety. In laboratories around the world, teams worked around the clock to interpret these signals. Each discovery revealed something more about the intelligence observing them. Patterns repeated with variations, as if testing Earth's problem-solving abilities. Every signal from humanity was measured and analyzed, and the responses showed recognition, hesitation, and even surprise. Humanity was no longer invisible. The galaxy had acknowledged its presence, and the acknowledgement carried weight. As the days passed, a plan began to take shape. Humanity would not simply respond passively. There would be a demonstration, deliberate and unmistakable, that Earth had been restraining itself, but could now assert its presence if necessary. Scientists and engineers worked together to prepare advanced transmissions, combining light, energy, and sound in ways that could be understood across space. It was a delicate balance. Too little, and the fleet might underestimate humans. Too much, and it might provoke a defensive response. Every detail had to be perfect. In parallel, preparations for a potential defense were quietly accelerated. Advanced spacecraft were readied, energy shields tested, and contingency strategies developed. Leaders understood that the galaxy was watching not only technology but decision-making. Humanity's restraint had been observed for centuries. Now its readiness would be evaluated. There was a sense of urgency, but also careful planning. Every move mattered. Then came the moment that would be remembered as the first warning. Earth's most powerful transmission, a pulse of light and energy, was sent directly toward the fleet. It carried not only information about human intelligence and achievements, but also a clear, deliberate statement. We warned you. We were restraining ourselves. The signal was both a demonstration and a warning. It did not threaten violence, but it did make clear that humanity was no longer hiding. The alien fleet paused, its movements slowing, as if processing the message. Instruments recorded subtle changes in energy output, shifts in formation, and patterns that suggested astonishment. For the first time, humans could measure the reaction of an intelligent alien presence in real time. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Humanity had stepped forward not with fire or weapons, but with clarity, intelligence, and controlled power. Throughout this time, ordinary life continued on Earth, mostly unaware of the unfolding events. Cities hummed with activity, oceans reflected sunlight, and the planet maintained its daily rhythm. Yet in hidden facilities, the hum of activity was constant. Scientists, engineers, and leaders worked tirelessly to analyze, interpret, and respond. Every calculation mattered. Every transmission was a statement. Humanity had moved from restraint to readiness, from observation to assertion. The weeks that followed were filled with careful observation. The alien fleet did not retreat, nor did it advance aggressively. It maintained a presence at the edge of the solar system, observing humanity's actions with patience. Scientists described it as a dialogue without sound or language, a study of behavior, intelligence, and strategy. Earth's restraint had been acknowledged, but the galaxy was now assessing readiness, capability, and intent. In secret meetings, leaders debated next steps. Should humans send probes farther into space? Should advanced technology be demonstrated more openly? There was no rush to escalate, but there was a clear understanding that the galaxy's gaze would not fade. Every decision carried consequence. Humanity's first warning had been delivered, and now Earth had to plan its next steps carefully, balancing caution with confidence. Meanwhile, scientists discovered subtle anomalies within the fleet itself. Small energy emissions, unexplained movements, and subtle patterns indicated that the observers were intelligent and adaptable. They were not uniform machines, but highly organized entities capable of learning and adjusting. This realization only deepened the sense of awe. Humanity was not merely facing distant objects in space. It was engaging with a presence that had intelligence, strategy, and curiosity comparable in ways to humans themselves. The first warning had changed humanity's perspective. No longer were humans simply observers of the galaxy. They were participants. The fleet's presence was a reminder that restraint had limits, that the universe recognized power, intelligence, and discipline. For the first time, humans fully understood that they were not small or insignificant. They had been measured and found capable. The question now was how to proceed with caution, assertiveness, and strategic clarity. In laboratories and command centers, simulations were run continuously. Teams tested scenarios of communication, defense, and expansion. Every possible outcome was considered. A fleet that might retreat, one that might observe indefinitely, or one that might test humanity further. The realization was clear. Humans had been given recognition, and with it came responsibility. Every transmission, every calculation, every spacecraft launched would be noticed, measured, and interpreted. Even as scientists and leaders worked in secrecy, the story of humanity's first warning reached the edges of public awareness in subtle ways. News stories hinted at unusual satellite readings, strange cosmic phenomena, and unexplained signals from space. People speculated endlessly, but few understood the scale of what was happening. The truth was that humanity had stepped forward, measured, deliberate, and ready. The first warning had been delivered, not with fear or aggression, but with clarity, intelligence, and quiet power. As the weeks turned into months, the alien fleet's presence remained steady. Observations continued, signals were exchanged, and humanity's readiness was tested in subtle ways. The galaxy had not yet opened dialogue in the way humans might have hoped, but the acknowledgement was clear. Earth had been seen, Earth had been tested, and Earth had responded. Humanity had moved from restraint to assertion, signaling that it was no longer hiding but prepared, intelligent, and aware. The significance of this shift was felt deeply among those who understood it. For centuries, humans had restrained themselves, hiding behind humility and caution. Now the galaxy had forced a reckoning. Restraint had been observed, tested, and ultimately acknowledged. Humanity had delivered its first warning, not of violence, but of presence, readiness, and the capacity to act if necessary. It was a statement that would echo through every decision, every calculation, and every explorer. After humanity's first warning to the alien fleet, the world felt a quiet shift. Even if ordinary people didn't notice it, something fundamental had changed. Earth had stepped forward, not with aggression, but with intelligence, readiness, and clarity. The galaxy had seen restraint, and now it had seen assertion. Humanity's next step was no longer hiding behind caution. It was moving forward with deliberate confidence. The first priority was exploration. Humanity had already sent probes into nearby star systems, but now the mission expanded. Advanced spacecraft were launched, equipped with systems that could operate autonomously for years. These ships carried scientific instruments, communication arrays, and subtle demonstrations of human engineering. The goal was not conquest, it was presence. Humanity wanted the galaxy to know that Earth was ready, capable, and aware. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock. Every spacecraft was designed with meticulous precision. Propulsion systems capable of faster-than-light travel were tested repeatedly. Energy shields were strengthened, and communication arrays were calibrated to send signals across light years. Every launch was carefully planned, every trajectory calculated with precision. The message was clear. Humanity had moved from observation to active participation in the galaxy. At the same time, Earth's communication efforts intensified. Pulses of energy, mathematics, and universal constants were sent far into space. Unlike before, these signals were not hidden. They were deliberate and public, designed to demonstrate intelligence and capability. Humanity's restraint was still evident, but so was its readiness. Every pulse was a statement. Earth had been measured, Earth had been acknowledged, and Earth was now asserting itself with purpose. The alien fleet continued to observe, adjusting its position and energy patterns in response to humanity's actions. Scientists described it as a dialogue without words, a study of behavior, strategy, and capability. Every move humanity made was measured, analyzed, and responded to. It became clear that the galaxy was not passive. It was actively evaluating how humans would act now that they had been acknowledged. The stakes were enormous, yet humanity moved with deliberate confidence. On Earth, governments and scientists began to coordinate in ways never seen before. The scale of planning required for interstellar expansion demanded unprecedented collaboration. Resources were shared, expertise pooled, and strategies aligned. For the first time, humanity was thinking not in terms of individual nations or conflicts, but as a species preparing to assert itself on a cosmic scale. The sense of unity, though quiet, was profound. Humanity's expansion was not reckless. Probes were sent first, mapping nearby systems and analyzing planets for potential habitability. Satellites were deployed to study star systems and detect any anomalies. Space stations were upgraded to serve as launch points for interstellar missions. Every project, no matter how technical, carried a message. Humans were intelligent, capable, and deliberate. The galaxy would see not only the technology, but the reasoning and responsibility behind it. At the same time, leaders understood that assertion did not mean aggression. Humanity's message to the galaxy was clear. Earth had been restraining itself, but it could now assert its presence if necessary. There was no threat of violence in the transmissions, only clarity, intelligence, and readiness. The alien fleet continued to observe, sometimes moving closer, sometimes holding its distance. Every adjustment was a subtle test, a measure of humanity's capabilities and intent. Scientists noticed small but significant responses from the fleet. Energy pulses changed in ways that suggested recognition and even caution. Patterns shifted in response to Earth's probes and transmissions. It was a subtle conversation, but it was unmistakable. The galaxy had acknowledged humanity's assertion. For the first time, humans could measure the impact of their actions in real time, not just on Earth but across the stars. The realization of power was profound. Humanity had always imagined itself small, limited to Earth, fragile in the cosmic scale. Yet now humans understood that they were capable of interaction, influence, and strategic action. They could assert their presence without aggression, communicate across unimaginable distances, and demonstrate intelligence that the galaxy could not ignore. For the first time, humanity's potential was fully visible to both itself and the observers beyond. With this new confidence, Earth began to consider the next steps. Colonization missions were planned, not out of desperation or conquest, but to extend humanity's reach and knowledge. Advanced spacecraft were equipped for long-duration missions carrying scientists, explorers, and automated systems. Every journey was meticulously designed to minimize risk while maximizing understanding. Humanity's expansion was deliberate, calculated, and respectful of the unknown. In laboratories and command centers, simulations were run to predict every possible scenario. Scientists and strategists anticipated the galaxy's responses, planning for communication, collaboration, and defense. Every action was measured, every decision weighed carefully. Humanity understood that assertion carried responsibility. It was not enough to demonstrate power. Humans had to show wisdom, restraint, and readiness for any outcome. Ordinary life on Earth continued, seemingly unchanged. People went about their routines, unaware of the cosmic developments unfolding beyond their skies. Cities thrived, oceans reflected sunlight, and communities lived daily lives. Yet behind the scenes, humans were becoming participants in a larger story, a story that spanned star systems and light years. Humanity's first warning had been delivered. Now humans were fully asserting themselves, moving from hidden observers to active participants. The first signs of this assertion were visible in space. Probes sent into nearby star systems began returning data at unprecedented speeds. Communications arrays transmitted mathematical and physical knowledge, demonstrating humanity's intelligence and reasoning. Satellites adjusted positions to maintain coverage and relay information across vast distances. Every action, no matter how technical, carried a clear message. Earth was aware, capable, and ready. At the same time, discussions about diplomacy began quietly among world leaders. Humanity had been recognized, measured, and observed. Now it was time to consider relationships with potential galactic neighbors. How would humans communicate with civilizations far more advanced? How would they establish trust without appearing weak or aggressive? These questions drove a new era of collaboration, strategy, and preparation. The alien fleet continued to watch, sometimes moving closer, sometimes holding its position. Energy readings and subtle movements suggested curiosity, assessment, and perhaps even respect. Humans realized that their assertion was being understood. The first warning had been a statement of capability. The ongoing actions were a demonstration of wisdom, restraint, and readiness. Humanity was no longer simply hiding. It was showing the galaxy what it could do. In this new phase, the mindset of humanity shifted profoundly. For centuries, people had measured success by achievements on Earth, cities, technology, and scientific discoveries. Now, humans measured themselves by potential, the ability to act, to communicate, to explore, and to assert responsibly. Every mission, every signal, every technological breakthrough became a reflection of intelligence, readiness, and awareness. Humanity's open assertion was more than technical. It was psychological. People working in secret facilities felt a sense of purpose, greater than any they had known. Every calculation, every launch, every signal sent carried meaning not just for Earth, but for the larger cosmic community. Humans understood that they were participants in a dialogue that spanned light years, and that every action could have consequences far beyond imagination. As probes reached new systems and returned with data, humans began to realize the scale of what they were doing. Every planet studied, every star analyzed, and every signal sent was part of a larger strategy. Earth was no longer passive. Humans had learned that restraint had been noticed, patience had been measured, and intelligence had been acknowledged. Now action, assertion, and readiness were equally essential. The first missions of interstellar travel were carefully monitored. Spacecraft moved with precision, avoiding hazards, analyzing planets, and sending data back to Earth. Engineers and scientists coordinated every step, ensuring that exploration was deliberate and controlled. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity was awake, aware, and asserting itself thoughtfully, responsibly, and intelligently. As humanity expanded outward, it began to feel a new kind of confidence. The first warning had been delivered, the alien fleet had acknowledged it, and now Earth was moving into a phase of open assertion. Humans were no longer hiding, no longer passive. They were participants, explorers, and communicators in a vast, intelligent cosmos. Every mission, every transmission, and every observation was a deliberate statement of capability, readiness, and wisdom. The galaxy had watched, evaluated, and responded to humanity's restraint. Now it was observing assertion. Humans had learned that their potential was not just measured by technology, but by strategy, intelligence, and responsibility. The first step had been a warning. The second step was action. Humanity had entered a new era, one where observation, restraint, and intelligence were combined with deliberate, confident assertion. And so, Earth had stepped fully into a new chapter. The first warning to the alien fleet, the careful assertion of intelligence, and the expansion of humanity into the stars had all prepared the planet for what came next: recognition. The galaxy had seen humans not as small observers, but as a species capable of thought, restraint, and deliberate action. Now the challenge was to transform acknowledgement into a lasting presence, to participate actively in a universe that had previously been distant and unknowable. In command centers and laboratories, teams worked tirelessly to coordinate humanity's next steps. Scientists, engineers, and leaders from across the globe collaborated as never before. Every signal sent, every probe launched, every spacecraft prepared for long-term exploration was part of a careful strategy. Humanity was no longer reactive. It was proactive, planning each move with precision and intelligence. The galaxy had tested humans, and now it was time to show that Earth could engage responsibly and effectively. The first step was diplomacy. While the alien fleet remained at the edge of the solar system, its energy patterns and movements suggested that communication was possible. Messages were crafted with care, combining mathematics, physics, and carefully chosen patterns to convey thought, intelligence, and respect. Humans understood that the galaxy measured not only power, but also reasoning, patience, and clarity. The transmissions were deliberate, clear, and without aggression. Every pulse was meant to say, Earth is aware, capable, and ready to participate. At the same time, preparations for interstellar travel continued. Advanced spacecraft, equipped with autonomous systems and energy shields, were launched to nearby star systems. Probes carried instruments for analyzing planets, detecting life, and mapping energy sources. Every mission was a combination of exploration and communication, a statement that humanity had arrived in the galaxy not as conquerors, but as intelligent participants. The planets of nearby systems became classrooms for learning, testing both technology and strategy. The alien fleet responded subtly but unmistakably. Patterns of energy shifted in ways that suggested recognition and even cautious approval. It was a dialogue without words, but one that humans could interpret through careful observation. Each adjustment, each subtle change in movement, was a response to Earth's transmissions and actions. The galaxy was not only watching, but it was engaging, testing how humans would act in the new era of visibility. In laboratories and command centers, humans analyzed the responses with fascination and caution. The fleet's movements were intelligent, deliberate, and adaptable. It became clear that the beings behind the fleet were not uniform machines, but highly capable strategic entities. Humanity's restraint, patience, and eventual assertion had been observed and acknowledged. But now the next challenge was understanding, interaction, and mutual recognition. Every action mattered. Every decision carried weight. The next phase involved expanding Earth's influence beyond its own solar system. Humanity began to establish small outposts on nearby planets and moons, equipped with communication systems, energy sources, and scientific instruments. These outposts were not militarized. They were centers of knowledge, observation, and interaction. Humanity wanted to demonstrate capability, responsibility, and readiness without provoking conflict. Every structure built, every probe sent was a deliberate signal. Humans were intelligent, capable, and cautious. Alongside expansion, diplomacy continued. Messages were refined to convey more than intelligence. They began to express thoughtfulness, ethics, and curiosity. Humans sent patterns representing fundamental principles of life, consciousness, and understanding. The goal was to show that Earth's species was not only capable of science and technology, but also of reasoning, ethics, and collaboration. The galaxy, in return, sent patterns that suggested recognition and interest. A dialogue, silent but profound, was emerging. Meanwhile, Earth's population remained largely unaware of the cosmic developments. Daily life continued, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in context. People laughed, argued, and celebrated life on a planet now recognized as a participant in the galaxy. Ordinary acts, running schools, growing crops, exploring oceans, were part of the human story that the galaxy could observe. Humanity's restraint, patience, and eventual assertion had made the species worthy of attention. Now humans had to prove that they could act wisely on a larger stage. The first visible sign of recognition came when energy patterns from the fleet shifted dramatically. Instruments detected new signals that were more complex and nuanced than before, suggesting curiosity and even communication intent. Scientists interpreted this as a first form of acknowledgement. The galaxy was no longer merely observing, it was inviting interaction. Humanity's transmissions, combined with strategic exploration, had opened a doorway. The first warning had become dialogue. In response, humans increased their pace of exploration, but with careful precision. Spacecraft traveled farther, studying new planets, moons, and asteroid systems. Every mission was meticulously planned to avoid hazards, preserve resources, and maintain clear communication. The objective was not expansion for conquest, but for understanding, learning, and signaling responsibility. Humanity wanted the galaxy to see not only capability, but also wisdom. Earth's leaders convened regularly to consider strategy. Humanity had moved from hiding to visibility, from observation to assertion. The next step required diplomacy, exploration, and influence. Decisions were no longer about nation-states alone. They were about the species as a whole, capable of strategic thought and deliberate action. Every choice reflected not only human intelligence but also ethical responsibility. Humanity had been recognized, but recognition demanded consistency, careful planning, and trustworthiness. Scientists and philosophers began to discuss the larger meaning of humanity's place in the galaxy. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars in wonder, imagining intelligence beyond Earth. Now, they had been acknowledged. Humans had restrained themselves, acted with patience, and finally demonstrated readiness. The next stage required thinking beyond technology and strategy. It required wisdom, ethics, and the ability to engage with beings whose scale and capability might surpass human imagination. In parallel, the alien fleet began to exhibit behavior that suggested collaboration. Energy patterns indicated observation of Earth's transmissions, space activities, and exploration efforts. Subtle adjustments suggested that the observers were learning from humans as much as humans were learning from them. The galaxy was testing humanity's capacity not just to act, but to reason, adapt, and engage thoughtfully. It was a lesson in responsibility on a cosmic scale. The first few months of this new era were a delicate balance of communication, observation, and exploration. Humanity had to maintain careful signals, extend presence through probes and spacecraft, and prepare for possible surprises. Every step was deliberate, every action measured. Humans understood that their place in the galaxy depended not only on capability, but also on the manner in which that capability was demonstrated. Back on Earth, awareness grew quietly among scientists and leaders. Humanity had passed the test of restraint, delivered a warning, asserted presence, and now entered a phase of influence and interaction. The galaxy had recognized Earth as capable, intelligent, and responsible. The next stage would require consistency, diplomacy, and strategic foresight. Every action had the potential to influence not only Earth's safety, but also its standing in a wider cosmic community. For the first time, humans felt a profound sense of identity beyond their planet. They were no longer simply Earthlings. They were participants in the galaxy, capable of communication, exploration, and reasoning. Every signal, every probe, every transmission carried meaning. Humanity's restraint had been acknowledged, assertion measured, and now recognition was opening a path to engagement. The alien fleet continued to observe, sometimes adjusting its position to respond to Earth's transmissions, sometimes sending signals that required careful analysis. Humanity interpreted these as invitations to learn, communicate, and expand understanding. For centuries, humans had restrained themselves. Now they were engaging with intelligence far beyond their planet, participating in a dialogue that spanned light years. Humanity's next challenge was sustainability. As expansion continued, resources on Earth were managed more carefully, technology shared responsibly, and exploration planned for long-term success. Humans were learning to think not only in terms of survival, but also in terms of reputation, ethics, and the responsibilities of being recognized in a larger community. Every action mattered, every decision had consequence, and every success reflected on the species as a whole. The era of recognition continued to evolve. Spacecraft traveled farther, probes returned with detailed analyses, and signals carried increasingly complex information about human intelligence, ethics, and curiosity. Humans had moved from hiding to visibility, from restraint to assertion, and finally to recognition and participation. The galaxy had seen Earth, measured its capabilities, and now engaged with its intelligence. In laboratories, scientists reflected on the transformation. Humanity had been observed, tested, and acknowledged. The first warning had been a statement of capability. The assertion had demonstrated readiness,